welcome back to Book Buzz with Jan and Payne, a podcast where we talk about romance books, our current reads, and we also have the pleasure of sitting down with some of our favorite authors and chatting with them about their amazing books.
All right. So when every time we talk in our podcast, I've always said, if a book makes you cry, it automatically goes into my perfect book stash. And I just love the feel of when a book makes you cry. I love that heart tugging feeling. I love when a book makes you swoon. I feel like, have you ever gotten those little butterflies in your stomach while you're reading it and you're like,
yes,
that is so cute. Like, I love that. So I love picking up books that literally just have all the feels that you could be crying one minute and laughing the next. You could be swooning one minute. The next you want to like slap the hero for whatever he did, or even the heroine for hurting the hero, because I find that we're always more protective of the hero. Well, I feel that I've been more protective of the heroine. You're more protective of the hero.
Always the hero. Always. I think there's only one or two books that I protect the heroine, but mainly I protect the heroes.
Yes. So I love reading about that. So it's a pleasure for me to announce that today we're going to be sitting down and talking to New York Times bestselling author Emma Chase. I love her, adore her. She's phenomenal. She's the queen, as I refer to her, because anything she writes, I pick up. It's a no-brainer for me. Her books make me laugh. They make me swoon like nonstop. Cough, cough, Edward, and now Connor. But they're also heart-touching and they stick with you. You think of them and you're like, oh, I love that book so much. So it's something about the way she writes. It's just phenomenal. So it's an honor to have her here with us. And we're going to be talking about her books, her characters, her upcoming release, Getting Real, and so much more. So make sure you have some coffee with you, you get comfortable, and we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining us today. It's truly an honor. We love your books. They're phenomenal. They're some of our favorite books ever. And it's such an honor to have you here with us. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. It's very exciting to be here with you. This is like the first podcast interview I've done, I feel like, since all the craziness began. So I'm a little bit out of practice, but I'm very, very excited to chat with you and talk about books. I feel like we've all kind of, been deprived of that interaction about books for so long that it's great to get back into it.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you get into writing?
Yeah, sure. So, it's been a lifelong dream of mine to be a writer. And I had ended up going the route, a different career route. I got married, I had kids. And when I was a stay-at-home mom and my kids were in school full time, I started writing as a hobby. And I took a class at the local college, and a creative writing class. And the professor teaching the class was actually someone that I'd gone to high school with, who had gone on to publish 3 sci-fi novels. Oh. So the class was about characterization and keeping your characters consistent and how to kind of structure a story. But it was also about how to get published. And this was, back like in the 2012, 2013 days, before everything was really moved online. So, but it made kind of knowing someone who had been published kind of made it feel like it was something that was, attainable. So I had written Tangled. I had gone through kind of this period of insomnia. So I was up like at nights, like writing away. And I was just really excited about the story. I thought it was really funny. Having Tangled from the male point of view felt like it really wasn't me kind of coming up with these lines. It was this guy, and I was just as entertained as everybody else. And I started sending it out. I started sending out query letters. And, like everybody else, you got your first crop of rejection letters, but they were really nice rejection letters for me. Everybody seemed to enjoy the story. They enjoyed the voice. So, I said to my husband, maybe it's just not that funny. But he said, well, you know, you're getting these nice responses, send out some more. So I sent it out again, and then I got 3 offers to publish Tangled. And that's all she wrote.
And it's awesome. It's funny that you say that, because it's Tangled is just from the male point of view. So
Yeah.
how is it writing that book and only a male's point of view versus a female's point of view?
Yeah. So for me, in the beginning, writing so in the Tangled series, 3 of the 4 books are exclusively from the male point of view. And in the beginning, it was a lot easier for me to write from that point of view, because it felt so different from myself. You know, it was just very easy to kind of crawl into this head of this character who in a lot of ways was nothing really like me. And it just made it feel really spontaneous and really just kind of without boundaries. And I could just write anything. And again, some of the lines that kind of just popped into my head, you know, very much seemed to come from this guy, this other person who was talking the way that he talks. And so it was felt very different from myself. So it was very engaging and fun to lose myself in the character. And having it be a man made that easier for me to kind of distance myself. It felt less self-conscious, you know, like less like, oh, you know, people are going to think that this is how I think or how I talk or how I would tell a story. So that in the beginning, and when I started writing from the female point of view, because the majority of my books now are dual point of view, and I love that. It was a little bit challenging. It was to kind of, again, crawl into the head of a female character now, you know, who maybe in some ways was a little bit more like me. Maybe there was a little bit more of myself in those characters, but still not, you know, still in that voice, not my own voice, but the character's voice.
Well, because when I think of your books, there's something about your books that it's so hard to forget your characters, the stories. There's the way you write these, it's like it takes your mind, your heart, and it makes you only focus on that. And it feels like you're watching a movie while you're reading it. And they're so unforgettable. Royally Screwed and yours are one of my all-time favorite of yours. I tend not to reread Royally Yours as much because it just breaks my heart. I keep thinking about it and I'm just like, you know, I love that book so much. And me and Nina were talking about that book a couple weeks ago. And it's like those stories that you write, they're so and I think it has to do with the characters that you dive so well into them that it's impossible for a reader to ever forget them. So how do you develop your plot and your characters to make them have their story in such an unforgettable story?
Thank you so much. Royally Yours, there's some, just as a quick aside, Royally Yours like broke my heart. Like it's very special to me because I don't know, there's just something about that story, and remind me to come back to something later on about Royally Yours. But anyway, yeah, so I like to, so normally, lately music has been a really big inspiration for me. And it's always kind of played a role, but for Royally Yours, for example, so the original plan for the Royally series was it was going to be the 3 books, Royally Screwed, Royally Matched, and Royally Endowed. And after Royally Endowed was published, I heard a song and the plot of Royally Yours just like was there. I mean, I literally have an email I remember writing to my agent like, oh, this is going to take me 6 weeks to write. It's going to be amazing. And it ended up taking me 6 months. Because even though I had the whole story in my head, the emotional highs and lows of that story, I was surprised. Like I would write a scene and it would kind of take me, you know, like 2 or 3 days to be able to then move on to the next part. So that was surprising for me. But normally how it happens is the characters usually come first. I feel like my stories are very character based and character driven. Mm-hmm. So it's this idea of where they start from and where they end up and how that happens. But usually it's the characters who grip me first. And I like to do all of my research before I start writing anything. So I might jot down lines of dialogue will come to me usually when a story's percolating, I guess you could say. So I'll jot that down. But anything when it comes to, like, for the Royally series, I read a lot of interviews with the royal family in the UK. I looked into the Constitution of Monaco. I actually read it, the English version, because I wanted to see, I did some research on the Kingdom of Jordan and what their kind of royal monarchy looks like and how it relates to the political system and the government. So I kind of do all that. So it's all in my head. I want that kind of all that information, and I can look back and refer to specific notes when needed. But even when I was doing the legal brief series on DC, like, I researched the legal system, because it's a little bit different in DC than in the rest of the country. So I wanted that kind of all that information in my head. So this way, because I don't know what I'm going to pick and grab from while I'm writing from that information. And yeah, there's just something about the journey of the character that, again, I enjoy as much as the reader does. And sometimes, even though I know how a story is going to unfold, the different lines that come out and the different moments for the character as they kind of become who they're meant to be at the end are surprising to me. And that, I think that makes it, that gives it that kind of that spontaneous, fresh feeling that a lot of readers feel like they get from my books. Like, it may be an old trope, but it feels different. It feels new and fresh.
And who's been your favorite character that you've written so far?
Oh God, it's so hard. I usually say whoever I'm writing right now is my favorite. There's something really special about Drew Evans, I think, because it was the first and Tangled was the first. And I don't think I'll never write a book like that again, because when you write something and there's kind of no expectations and no bar, I just think it affects you differently, and that was, and a big part of Tangled too was just, again, for me and for my own enjoyment and kind of figuring out what my life was going to look like once my kids were kind of out of the house and in school full time and I had all this time on my hands. So I think there are favorites for different reasons. So, Drew's definitely up there because he's the first. There's something about the Royally series that for me is just really solid. Like, I feel like every story in that series, there's not a dip. There's not a high or low. They're all kind of really consistent. And I love hearing from readers. That's probably the most series that I hear from readers, that different books are their favorite. Like, everybody has a favorite in that series for different reasons. And I love that. So I just love that whole world, and I love all of those characters. And then my latest one, Getting Real, Connor and Violet are the new characters. And we've seen a little bit of Connor in the earlier books, but this is his story. There is something just so pure about Connor and Violet that just makes me smile and that I just love so much. And I don't use the word pure often, but they're really good people, and they're funny and they're entertaining. But I think that's the biggest thing that stands out, is their intentions are just so good and so pure. And it's just such a joy to kind of see them go on this ride, and see how they handle life and love and how it affects them. It just really hit me in a very special way for those two.
So we did have the honor of reading Getting Real, and it was amazing. I just want to put out there, and it was, I love the Connor, and we were talking about this yesterday. Connor is that hero that is just goals.
Yeah.
His heart is made of gold, and the way, I think the whole story, it's like every character you write, it doesn't matter if you write a side character, I feel that you write those side characters for a reason, and they give meaning to the story. And it's just the way you write your characters, it's just phenomenal. They're so, like I keep saying, they're unforgettable because each character has their own story. And that story, it's a very detailed, it's I think they each have a life lesson, you could say.
Mhm.
So it's like they come together for a reason, and Getting Real was phenomenal. Loved
Thank
it. It was
Thank
so
you.
funny too. I was laughing. I was like, "What?" I was like, "What's going on, Connor?"
I thought Getting Real was probably some of the best rom-com writing that I've done in a
Mhm.
while. Because
Mhm.
I feel like, the Royal series is definitely more contemporary romance, royal romance. But yeah, there was a lot of humor in it. So I'm so glad. I'm so happy. It was my pandemic book too, Getting Real. So
What's easier for you, writing a rom-com or something like Royally Screwed, to where it's the Royally series, to where it has a lot of up and down moments? And for me, the Royally series, it's very heart touching, and I cry every single time I read it. So it's like, what's easier, and what do you prefer, like the rom-com or the sort of like the Royally series vibes?
yeah, as long as I can sync my like when I thought of Royally Screwed, the idea for Royally Screwed first, um, there was so much to sink my teeth into as far as the relationships. And again, I think that's where the relatability comes from, and the realism comes from. Is I wasn't just thinking about, okay, it's about a prince. I was excited to see, okay, what's his relationship with his grandmother like? What's his relationship with his brother like? The good and the bad. What's his relationship with the press like? And there was just kind of so much to dive into. So I think when it comes to contemporary romances, what I have found is, because originally the Tangled series, when I was writing that, my goal was to make people laugh on every page. Like that's
Mhm.
like I wanted a smile, a giggle, a laugh on every single page. So that's kind of what I think of when I think, a true rom-com is the goal is the humor.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Um, and then in contemporary romance, it's more you have kind of all this other stuff happening and all these stories around, but the romance is the center, the romance is the driving force of the story. And I think that allows you to really explore, so many different emotions. Whereas I feel like with a rom-com, it's okay to get serious and it's okay to have that poignant moment, but you should probably have just one. You know what I mean? Like, and you could see that in the Getting Some series, like in each book, in Getting Schooled and Getting Played, and then in Getting Real, it's very light and very humorous and entertaining and feel good. And then you kind of have that one moment where you're like, oh, and you just get fun, but then it's
Mhm.
okay. So I wouldn't say it's easier. I like doing both. I would say probably a rom-com is more challenging, just because there's always the thought of, is it going to be funny?
Mhm.
Can I make this funny? And for a while, the first few books, like I said, that in my career, I was kind of like, after the Tangled series, I wasn't sure if I could keep doing it. Like I didn't know if I could be funny outside of Drew Evans and that world.
Mhm.
Um, so that was kind of, fun to find out, that, yeah, I can be. And then I wrote Sustained, with all the kids, and there was a lot of humor in that as well. But I think there's a little bit more pressure with a rom-com, is because you want to make sure that it's funny universally. And that's a little bit trickier to do.
But how do you come up with these scenes that are just like, there's a scene in Getting Real that I'm just like, I'm thinking about it now and I just want to laugh about it. How do you come up with these scenes that are so random yet hilarious?
Yeah. In Getting Real, I have to say there are two. There's the one chapter, the wedding chapter is one of the favorite chapters that I've ever written, ever. Like it's pretty long too. That was the other thing. Getting Real had some pretty long chapters for me, but it was okay. It all worked. So that was great. And then there's another scene from Violet's point of view that's also probably one of my top 5 favorite scenes ever. But I don't know. It just kind of, you just sit down and you kind of let the words flow. And again, for me, it's all about kind of being in the character's head. Once I can, it clicks. And once it clicks and I know how they see things and how they word things and kind of the pattern of their speech, and how they think and feel, then it becomes very easy to just let it flow. And again, I even surprise myself at times. I think pop culture references, which, are kind of scattered throughout all of my books, that helps. I think that makes there's a connection, in that shared pop culture reference between the character and the reader, which can infuse a lot of humor as well, that everybody gets the joke, you're in on the joke. But it's just about kind of letting the character speak. That's my number one thing. And then I go back and I revise and I revise and I revise. That's huge too. Like I have probably read the Getting Real manuscript 200 times from beginning to end. So a lot of times I will just let the character talk and I'll write a chapter through, or I'll write a scene straight through, and then I'll go back and tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak. And then some of those funnier lines come to me then.
That's awesome. How long does it usually take you to write a book? Like even when you're revising and editing and everything, how long does it take you from when you start writing it to when it's all completely done?
It's done. It used to be like 3 or 4 months. I'm finding now, again, I don't know if it's because of, world events and everything that's going on, more like 3 to 6 months, probably till I'm really happy with it. I'm generally not a perfectionist in real life, but apparently in my reading, my editors usually need to pry the manuscript from my cold dead hands, because I'm like, just let me read it one more time. So, and then when you get to the point where you're like, changing something, and then when you read it the next time, you're changing it back to what it was, that's usually when it's like, okay, you got to send it off and it's time. But I also write out of order too. And it's funny because I'll have a story idea and I'll conceive of the idea. And like I said, usually what happens is I have the idea, I have the characters. So I'm actually writing a work in progress right now that I'm hoping to be done by the end of December. And I thought of the idea over the summer, and I jotted down notes about the characters, who they are, what the possible names, you go through a couple different versions of their names. For me, I feel like it's very important for the name to reflect the character's personality, the character's being, kind of who they are. And then I jot down different plot points, different dialogue that comes to me throughout. And then you sit down and you actually start writing. And for me, there's the fun writing, which is just like the freewheeling, like, okay, I'll fix it later. And there's the fixing, which takes a little bit more time and is a little bit more strenuous, because you really have to make it, look good. You can't just write a note to yourself, make this better.
Each author, the way how they write, their process is totally different. But for you, what comes first, the title or the story?
Oh, definitely the story. Yeah, definitely the story. So like I said, the story that I'm working on now, in my head, I'm calling it The Beach House, but I don't think it's going to be, I'll be shocked if it ends up being the title, just because it's not very sexy. And also sometimes what happens too, and this is one of the hazards, I feel like, of being a rom-com-ish writer, because I feel like even my romantic comedies are infused with a lot of humor. So, and what happens is you'll have a story idea and you start laying it out, and sometimes you want to get pulled to like a darker place, and you want to kind of infuse some like darker elements. So in Getting Schooled, for example, the reason Callie came home, so Callie's living in San Diego and she has to come home to take care of her parents. And I knew that was going to happen because I saw them kind of in high school working together. So I knew she'd have to be home for a reason, for, at least a couple months working at high school. But originally I was really leaning towards making it that her father had cancer, or that her father had passed away, or that both her parents had passed away. She had to box up the house. So, I mean, and you think about how different that story would have been if I had gone there. And none of those felt right. None of those fit. And none of them fit because that wasn't the tone of story. That wasn't the story that I was telling. Although that could be a great story, and, that gives you kind of great fertile ground for emotion and connection, reconnection. That wasn't the story I wanted to tell. So it took some time, even though I had the rest of the story out, it took some time to figure out what that motivation was going to be for her to come home. And then when I did, I think I called my agent like a Sunday night. And I was like, I was so excited.
Because
it's
I
so
got
kind
it.
yes, because it's so kind of silly but funny but embarrassing, and and it just so that's part of it too. I feel like as a rom-com writer is keeping myself from kind of going over to the dark side, and knowing that the tone of the story that I want to tell and that's going to work best, and then letting myself say, okay, I'll figure that out. Like I can start writing this scene at the end because that's what I'm seeing. I can start writing this scene over here and I'll figure that part out later.
And when you're writing your scenes, I know there's some, like with the Royally series, how do you get yourself in the mood when you're writing a really emotional, sad scene? There's some in Royally Screwed, Royally Yours, especially. How do you prepare for those scenes?
Yeah, so again, this is where music for me comes in a really big way. I have a playlist for all my books these days, and I will listen to, usually in each of the books, I feel like there's one song that really signifies who the characters are, who the couple is, what the story is for me. But even if that's not the main song, there'll be other songs that'll kind of help put me in the mindset and the emotional kind of direction to write that scene. So I'll listen to that song over and over and over again. And I'm going to pull up my playlist right now. I'll tell you what the songs were. But I'll listen to it over and over again. I'll listen to it in the car. I get a lot of my ideas in the car. Funny enough, it used to be on the treadmill. When I was jogging on the treadmill, I'd get a lot of ideas. But then I started walking and jogging outside. And there's something about being outside that I feel like you still need your attention to be around you a little bit more. So now it's the car. And I think there's something about doing something else, because I'm focused on driving actually, that kind of lets your mind wander and be a little bit more free. So I'll be playing the song and thinking about it. And I have dictation software on my phone. So if I come up with a really good line or a really good idea, I'll just hit the dictation.
I love that.
Yeah, and I'll record. And sometimes it's like trying to decode message, because the dictation software doesn't always work out. But I'll remember what it is. So yeah, so that's really what it is for me, is the music helps me get there. And also just sometimes I can relate, like there was a scene in Getting Real that I sobbed, that I mean, and when I write too, it's completely quiet. I have headphones on, usually noise canceling headphones. I don't actually have music playing when I write. That all happens before. So I need like silence. So it's just like me in the scene with the characters. And again, so kind of when I can make myself cry, I know that's it. Like I've hit it. Okay. Like that's going to stay. And every time you've cried, I guarantee you I've cried. I cried in Royally Screwed. I cried in Royally Screwed when he gave his speech, and when he talked to the Queen, there were certain parts that made me choke up. But yeah, sometimes it's about just finding, relating to the character. And some of those experiences I can imagine. I'm a parent, I can imagine what it might be like if one of my kids was injured or I thought I might be losing them. So it's just kind of about finding that connection to what the emotion is that the character is going through at that time. So for Getting Real, what inspired the really sad dramatic scene, actually, it's funny, it was Song to the Siren by Rose Betts. And I heard that song in the Snyder cut of beautiful. And I heard the Snyder cut of Justice League. And so like things like that will jump out at me and grab me. For Royally Yours, excuse me. For Royally Yours, the song that basically inspired the whole story and the whole plot of Lenore and Edward was Feels Like Home by Edwina Hayes.
Yes.
It's beautiful. It's a little haunting. And again, for every one of those emotional scenes, I just kind of repeated that over and over again. And that really helped me get to that point where I could write something beautiful and, sad, but beautiful.
I'm gonna listen to that song while I reread Royally Yours now.
Oh yeah, I'll send you the playlist because I have a whole
Yes.
playlist. And it used to, but now, like I said, it just really helps. And sometimes the songs are mentioned in the books,
Mhm.
and sometimes they're not. And sometimes it's just me. It may not make sense all the time, but those are the kind of the songs that help me get to where I need to be.
So Emma, I'm gonna need that playlist.
Absolutely. You got it.
So, what is the most surprising thing you discovered while writing your books?
I think part that I could keep going, that I can keep doing this. It's funny because every time you write a book, it's hard. There is no easy book. And I've thought to myself, oh, that's going to be an easy one. And it's never easy. They're hard in their same way. So again, when my career first started and the Tangled series first took off, there was a part of me that was like, okay, this is it. This is all I have. I'm kind of empty now. And then I got the idea for the Legal Brief series, and that was published. And after that series, that was when I was kind of like, okay, I can keep doing this. And now it's just waiting for the ideas, because ideas come every day. I mean, I've emailed my agent, I've jotted things down, but it's kind of discerning the ideas that are fleeting and the ideas that are really going to stick with you. And that can be different, so that I think is probably the biggest, most exciting thing, is that there may be lulls, in between ideas. There may be lulls in between books, but I can definitely, this is something that I love doing. It's something that I can keep doing.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you said kind of who your favorite characters are, but
Mm-hmm.
which book has been your favorite to write, but also which one has been the hardest for you to write?
Okay. So Sustained was probably the easiest to write. Sustained is the second book in the Legal Brief series with Jake and Chelsea, and Chelsea is the guardian to 6 children. So that was probably the easiest to write, just because I knew just the premise. You have this grumpy defense attorney who kind of falls in love with not just this beautiful aunt, but her 6 orphan nieces and nephews. So I knew, like, universally romance readers were going to love that. It's hard not to love that. And also the kids. I mean, I have 2, they're older now, but I have 2 very passionate, spirited children who are hilarious and very smart, so I knew a lot of my own children would be infused kind of into that book, and that's where a lot of that comedy comes from as well. So that was probably, again, no book is easy, but if I had to pick one, that was probably felt the easiest to write. The hardest book for me was probably Overruled, because it was the first book after the Tangled series, and again, it was my first dual point of view. And it was the first book, again, where I was kind of crawling into the head of another character. And I wasn't sure, if it could be funny or what it would turn out like. And funny enough, Stanton, who is the hero in Overruled, is from Mississippi. So I did a lot of research into kind of, a guy from Mississippi. And I think having his accent come into play, I think that helped me, again, not just separate him from myself, but separate him from the other male characters that I had already written, which was really important to me, because I want my stories to be, entertaining and beloved, of course, but I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. That's important to me, is to tell a different story with different characters every time.
And I think, well, in like you're succeeding on that, because every story of yours, it's your writing, but it's a different story from your previous books. It never feels the same. So it's like, even with these stories with the getting schooled and played in real, it's the same series, but they feel completely different. So it is, and I love that. Getting schooled I love that book, which I have a question for you a little bit later on in the interview. But I know with Tangled, you mentioned since that it was your first book, we got so many questions to ask you about since it is becoming, well, it was recently, Passionflix optioned it, they wrapped it, and it's supposed to be coming out this year. How was getting your book turned into a movie? How hard was it transitioning your words from the book to a script?
Yeah. Yes. So Tangled was optioned by Passionflix, filmed in August, and an official release date hasn't been announced yet, but we're on course, I think, for around the end of the year that it'll be coming out. I mean, it was exciting, of course. That's not even something I think that I dreamed when I first started writing, that it would be turned into a movie. But when someone says they want to make your book into a movie, your first thought is, oh my God, that's amazing. And then your second thought is, oh God, please let it be good. And I mean, have Passionflix's work and knowing their commitment to the story and knowing Tosca, I was less concerned about that. I knew that, it would be a quality film. But Tangled is not an easy book to adapt to film because so much of the character development and the comedy takes place in his head. So there was a thought, was okay. And then, it was published in 2013. 2021 is not 2013. So there was a part of me like, okay, are we going to have to, do we want to water him down? No, or, how is that all going to come together and work? So I got the script from Passionflix, and any fears of him being watered down were gone. It's definitely Drew through and through. And a screenplay is different. It's funny because I think because my stories are so dialogue heavy, I think that's why they translate well. Like when you said, oh, it's like you're watching a movie. I feel that way too. I think there's a lot of influence from, I grew up in the 90s. My teen years were in the 90s. If you look at the films, in the 90s, like Heathers and Singles, they're very character driven, kind of light, humorous, dialogue heavy movies. So I think that has a lot of influence in my writing as well. So the script, it's just much tighter, and I was very much involved in the script process, which I'm so grateful for, because that was terrific. Because I want my readers to be happy and excited, and I definitely think they will be. So with the script, it was just kind of a matter of, because there's so many funny lines that Drew has, and it was kind of condensing it and deciding what we needed for the story, because although it was tempting to just, let Josh talk to the camera for 2 hours, like stand up, there was also information that the audience needs to know. So that kind of made it a little bit easier to decide what really needed to be there. Of course, in a humorous and funny way. And then I met Tracy, who's the director, Tracy Hayes, who's phenomenal. And her vision for the movie is so great. And the energy and just how she talked about just the different shots and what it would look like and what it would feel like was very exciting and really made me feel completely at ease that this was going to be something, extraordinary, special. And then I went down in August, and I was lucky enough to watch them film for a couple days, which was, phenomenal to be on I'd never been on a movie set before. And so to be like surrounded, and everyone had read the book, everyone, and everyone liked it. So it was really cool, like the energy that was on the set of everyone being excited to tell this story. And, there were some moments that were surreal. You see an actress in like full, like Mother Superior garb. And you think to yourself like, wow, okay, a couple years ago, I thought it would be funny to put a nun in my story. And now I'm even looking at a nun. So that was kind of surreal. But the whole experience was lovely. And I'm so excited. And meeting Catherine Hughes and Josh Plassey, who play Drew and Kate. I got to meet them on the set, and they're phenomenal. They understood these characters. They're perfect for these characters. And that's really, for me, when it all came together, and you just knew it was going to be something really special and really funny and exciting. And I think readers are going to absolutely love the film. It feels like the book, like the structure of the movie is very familiar to the book. So I think everyone's just really going to love it.
And readers are very, very protective
Yes.
of Drew. They love him. I remember when they announced that it was filming was about to start. I've never seen so many people come to like a protective mode over a character for Drew. And even now they're so hyped about it. So what can they expect when they watch this? Because it is going to be different. Like you said, the book, we learn more about him because we're inside his head.
Correct.
So how is that going to be portrayed in the movie? Like, is it different, or is the vibe different than how it is when you're reading the book?
Well, you know, it's really interesting because I actually had this discussion with one of the actors on the set. So the interesting thing is, but first of all, the tricky thing about adapting a book to a film is every single person who has read that book is going to have a different image in their head of who these characters are, what they sound like, you know, how a scene unfolds. Like, that's just the nature of reading. So when you cast real people into these roles, I feel like, you know, you're going to have your range of reactions because it's never going to be exactly what everyone has been picturing in their head. So for us, I kind of felt like acting ability and being able to act was the top of the list, because you could have models who maybe look exactly like these characters are described, but like, and no offense against models, I'm sure there's models out there who are great actors and actresses, but you know, if you don't have the acting talent, the chops to back it up, then it's not going to be a successful film. So that was the top for me. And then the second thing for me was the actors. I wanted them to embody the characters. I wanted them to feel. And it's hard to describe, but I was also involved in the casting decisions. Every actor who was cast, you know, they consulted me. So, and I was great with that. And some of them look like literally like they walked out of my head. But it's more than just the looks for me. I wanted to feel like they are this character. They could embody who the person was. Because like you said, I think with my stories, even the side characters, when you're reading, you get a very clear sense of who they are and what their history is. And that's all in my head when I'm writing too. So that must come across on the page, you know, that they have a life, you know, they didn't just start and exist in this book when they popped onto the scene. So I think about like the life kind of around a character when I'm writing them. But that's what I think readers can expect, is these characters are going to feel very, very familiar. You know, of course, like the lines and the sexiness and the humor and the tension, it's all going to be there. So I think they're going to love it. They're going to love it. Once you once you get past that something may look slightly different than what you envisioned, but once you see that it's good, it'll be okay.
And I think me and Ping have always said we prefer to see a movie where the person playing the role gets the role and knows how to act in that role versus someone who looks exactly who we envision in our mind.
Right.
Because when you're turning a book into a movie, you want that character. You don't want, you know, you don't
want a picture.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's what we've always said. So we're so excited to see it. And I know the option where you release Screw 2.
Yes.
I think everybody that knows me knows that book is my everything. That book, it's literally what introduced me to loving the royal romance.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I love that. I'm so protective of that book. So I'm like super nervous when they first announced it. I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to be on the edge of my seat, but I'm so excited. I can't wait to watch that movie when it comes out. I'm so excited.
I think it's going to be a beautiful film. I still think Royally Screwed is probably one of the most romantic stories. To me, it's the most romantic story I've ever written. There's just something just so kind of sweeping, I feel like, about it. But the good thing, really quick, about Tangled was when I was on set, what's kind of magical, and I think this will definitely come across in the film, is the actors understood the characters so well. It was lovely to see them do things, certain actions, for example, like the way, Dolores passes Drew her purse, for example, that weren't necessarily in the book, but were exactly how the character would do it. Like for me, that was amazing. That was like the coolest thing. And I think that's what's going to make the film really special and really pleasing to readers who love these characters, because they're genuinely going to see their characters, come to life on the screen. With Royally Screwed, I think the magic of Royally Screwed, so it's definitely, it's coming. We've hit some speed bumps, but it's definitely coming. What I love and what I trust so much in my discussions with Tosca and, some of our discussions about the script, is she has such a good sense about what makes the story so special. Like she immediately gets that. So like the first version of the script for Royally Screwed, there was some exchange in the dialogue between Nicholas and the Queen that had been taken out. And we had a discussion and she wanted that put back in because it demonstrated the family relationship. And that's part of what makes the book so special, is it's not just about, the prince looking for his wife or the queen. It's about, this is your grandmother. This is someone that you love and sometimes makes you want to rip your hair out, and vice versa. And what does that look like? What does that sound like? So that's what I think is very exciting about Passionflix making Royally Screwed, is that Tosca and the whole team, they understand the elements that we love in a story. And they make sure that gets in there.
Well, I'm so excited for Tangled, and I'm super excited for Royally Screwed because there's one scene that and I hope it's in the movie. I hope that it has to be my favorite scene of the whole Royally Screwed book. And it's the scene that makes me cry the hardest. So I really hope it's on there. I'm so excited to watch, like I said, to watch Tangled. Because the book is really funny. It's hilarious. So it's going to be fun watching that come to screen. And I know since you were talking a little bit about the whole Royally series, let's talk about Edward. I want to talk about Edward with you. So let me start off with saying Royally Screwed, hands down my favorite book of yours. And I don't know why maybe it's because it was the first book I read of yours and introduced me to your words, and I love it. Yeah. But Royally Yours, there's something about that book that is just magical. The way I describe that book, it's magical because we learned about Queen Leonora from the previous books. Yeah. And it's funny because when we met her, she was the way I envisioned her was this really mean queen who didn't want to didn't want to see outside her bubble. Yeah, that's what I got from her. And then when I dove into her book, it's like completely not what I thought how she was. And now I understand her. Yeah. I'm like, I get it. I get why she is the way she is. And I feel that those characters are the ones that are stuck with me forever. And especially Edward. That has to be my favorite hero of yours. So how was it writing that book, knowing the outcome of their love story? Because if people haven't read it, like Lenny, because that's how he called her. Yeah. I love that. She loses so much. So you see why she is the way she is. So how was it writing that love story, knowing their outcome of it?
Yeah, it was wonderful to have the opportunity to just as you said, to show readers why she is the way that she is. Like we meet the ancestors of people that we kind of see in Royally Screwed. So that was really fun to fill in all those gaps. And she was always, even in the original 3 books, for me, she was always a scene stealer, the queen, because there's a duality to her that is fascinating. There's a love for her grandsons, a very motherly love. mixed and sometimes at conflict with this duty and commitment to what is best for her country and what is best for the legacy of her family, you know, and it's something that she just constantly has to have at the forefront of her thoughts. So she was always fascinating to me, but but again, I never planned to do her story, and then just one day, I heard the song and it just hit me, and I was like, oh my god. And I don't want to say that it's tragic, because I feel like it ends, Royally Yours ends in a very wonderful, loving, beautiful place. And they have a beautiful love story.
Yes.
Like that's what I wanted to give her. And that's what I think makes Royally Yours so special, is their relationship is just beautiful and stunning. And I'm so glad that she got to have that, because like you said, she has lost so much and she has had to be so strong. And now you find out part of her strength was, you know, meeting this man and falling in love with this man, and he loves her exactly as she is. There's a line that I actually wrote the other day. There's a line that Lenora has in a project that I'm working on. that
my heart just like beat out of my chest.
That she's giving advice to someone, and the advice is that when you marry, you know, find a confident man, and find a man who loves you enough, who is content to stand in your shadow and watch you shine. And I feel like that was Edward in a nutshell. Is that he was confident enough. He was never threatened. He was I mean, she was more powerful than him, you know what I mean? But he was never threatened or put off by her power or by her standing, because he just adored her, and he loves her so much that he's perfectly happy to let her have the spotlight, you know, and let her be who she needs to be. So thank you. I'm so excited. Yeah, no, Royally Yours is super special to me as well. And I think because there is a sadness to the story. I think knowing where things are in Royally Screwed, there's for lovers of the series, there is a sadness that you can't escape, because as beautiful as this is, you know, it's not going to last forever. And in romance, you know, we like to leave things at a place where we think they're going to last forever.
Yeah. There's a scene where Lenora is from the previous book before Royally Yours, where she's talking to Edward's painting.
Yes.
When you read that scene, you're like, she's talking to her, the painting. But then you read Royally Yours and it hurts.
Yes.
You're like, oh my gosh, like it literally hurts. And I cry it's funny because Nina, she's also said, she's like, that book makes me cry. I was like, that book from the very first page, I'm like sobbing, because that has to be the purest love story I've ever read, because like you said, he would do anything for her.
Yeah.
And it just shows that he loves her the way she is. He never tried changing her. And I think that's what makes the love story so perfect, that you wrote it in a way to where it's like we get to see what he thinks and what he feels, but we also understand her, because she is brought up she's lost so much, so she has to put up a front and be strong and take over the throne that she was born into. Yes. So it was very, very interesting to see her and get to know her. So thank you for writing Royally Yours, because we get her so much better. And now I'm so curious about what you're writing.
So thank you for loving it. Truly, thank you. Because I wasn't sure if that was going to be just like a passion project for me, you know, because sometimes I get lost thinking about if I had the ideas to do her story when I first started Royally Screwed, like Edward would still, like if Edward was in Royally Screwed, how would that change things? And there's a part of me that's glad I didn't have that idea. Because I think the dynamic between Nicholas and Lenora would be very different if Edward was there. And I think Lenora as a character, I think she is who she is, and we see who she is in Royally Screwed. You know, there's a line in Royally Yours where she says, like, you know, but I wouldn't be me, I would be some other version of me. And I think that's very true and very understandable. The project that I'm working on, I don't want to give too many details because I'm still working on it and I don't have like a solid release time yet, but there's definitely going to be that I've been working on, and I love it, a companion novella to the Royally series. And it will very much be for fans of the series who have read all 4 books. And it will answer some of the lingering questions that I think are still out there. So it'll be a collection of scenes, probably about like 15 scenes throughout all 4 books, either before Royally Screwed. So we'll see, you know, why Edward isn't around in Royally Screwed. And we see exactly how that happened. And yeah, it will be devastating. And then we're
ready.
And I know, and you know, I've been thinking about it, and I kind of wanted to find a way to share it with my readers, because I know that you guys are as invested as I am. So this was, I thought, you know, the best way to do that. And it's not going to all be devastating. We're gonna see when Thomas, Nicholas, and Henry's father brings Callista home for the holidays when they're dating to meet his parents. And, you know, what does Lenora feel about that? And what does, you know, Callista feel about that? So we'll find out a little bit more about them as well, kind of like the extended epilogue to Royally Matched. But we'll see a little bit more of that. So yeah, and I'm enjoying writing it, and it's sad and it's beautiful and it's wonderful, but I think the readers who love Lenora and Edward will really, really love this project, because this will, I think, tie things up in a really final way that we all deserve.
So I'm excited. I'm scared.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very excited. So jumping on into the Getting Some series.
Yes.
Because it started with Getting Scold, and that's Callie and Garrett. Love that series. I know when I finished that book, I messaged you and I asked you if we were gonna get a story, a novella of them when they first started dating, because in the book it's described as they started dating because he pretended he didn't have a quarter for a vending machine, I think it was.
Yeah.
So are we gonna, because like that is like the cutest thing ever.
Yeah. You know, I have a scene in my mind about the first time he tells her he loves her. And I think it would be a really nice Valentine's Day, like bonus short story kind of thing. So we'll see. I think so. I don't know when, but it won't be a novella, but just like a bonus kind of content, because it's definitely they were definitely adorable, I think, in high school, you know, and that's why I think they just slip so easily back into each other's lives. You know, I love the Getting Some series. It was the first time I'd ever heard comfort read. Someone described Getting Schooled as a comfort read, and I had never heard that before, but it's just warm and fuzzy and wonderful, you know, something about that. And I think Getting Real is like the cherry on the sundae of that series. I feel like it really finishes it off well. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, so I think like a bonus story, maybe around Valentine's Day, I would love to do that. Will give us a little peek at Garrett and Callie.
Well, I'm so excited.
When they were dating, yes. And in Getting Real, Connor, that's one of the reasons Connor tells that little story. In the beginning, he's talking about Garrett and Timmy and their relationship, and how, you know, 7 years is hard. And, you know, Callie kind of came into play at that point too. So yeah, I would love to expand on that a little bit more and show them when they were in high school.
So how did you come up with the series? Because it is a series of brothers.
Yes.
So how did you come up with, each brother is different? I mean, Garrett is a coach, high school coach, and then I think it's Dean, right?
Dean is his best friend. Yes. And Dean he's also a teacher and an assistant football coach, and he's a musician.
And then we have Connor, who is a doctor.
Yes.
Which brings me to also asking you, what research did you do diving into Getting Real? Because it is focused on Connor as a doctor and then she's a nurse. So how much research did you do going into that book too?
Yeah, I did quite a bit. Thankfully, there's a lot online about, different terms, different, I actually joined a Reddit group. I looked into a Reddit group for first year doctors, med students, that kind of thing. It's funny because Violet talks about, Connor wears compression shorts under his scrubs. That's something that I got off of Reddit. Different doctors talking to each other about, how to kind of keep everything contained in scrubs, which are very loose fitting clothes. So I did a decent amount of research because I did want to get it right. I mean, like I said, I don't want nurses and doctors, if they read this, to be taken out of the story because I got something wrong. So I really tried to, I actually ended up, there's a scene where CPR is being performed. And I had researched on several websites, the ratio for breaths to compressions and whatnot, because I felt like something like that is important too in fiction, because something like that can stick with people, and something like that, they can remember it. And God forbid, they're in a life-threatening situations, they can use, I have used what I've learned, not to that extreme, but you can remember what you read in fiction. So it was important to me, particularly to get that scene right. And I got the ratio wrong because I had read it. And in the first draft I had written, I think it was 30-2. It was 30 compressions to 2 breaths, which is correct, but that's only when there's one person performing the CPR. When there's 2 people performing the CPR, it's 15-2. And we had actually gone already into recording the audiobook. It was already recorded. And I messaged my editor and I said, can we change this? Is there any way that we can fix this? Because I think it's important. And she said, yes, and we did. So now it's correctly written in the book that it's 15-2 when 2 rescuers are present. So I mean, I did research those details, the different hospitals. There's a level 1 hospital, a level 2 hospital, and what that means. So I had kind of like a bunch of articles and a bunch of different research that I had done to try and get these professions of an emergency room doctor and emergency room nurse accurate. So also we had talked about, you had asked how I came up with the idea for the series. So it's funny because I think I was contemplating at the time, I remember talking to my agent and I had 2 kind of ideas. So Lakeside is very much based on my own hometown that I grew up in, New Jersey. And, there's something about writing about home that is just like really kind of comforting and warm, and writing about people, as much as I like climbing in the head of a prince, and that's fun and exciting. There's also just something really comforting, like I said, about writing people and places that you've grown up in and so well. So I had 2 ideas. I was talking to my agent about it. One was kind of, I think it was like a Grey's Anatomy-ish type of idea with med students in med school. And, there are different relationships and, they work hard, they play hard, that kind of thing. And then the other idea was second chance romance, and he's a football coach. And I think that's how I described it. Football coach at high school, and, his high school sweetheart comes back and they kind of reunite, the same school they used to date at. And my agent's great at being able to know when I'm really excited about an idea. And as she said, that's the one, that's it, that's the one. So I thought about it a little bit more and it just took off. And then a lot of readers were interested in Connor's story when Getting Schooled first came out, because we see him kind of in the middle of a separation at that point with his wife. And I was really excited to write Connor's story. He's in his 40s. He's kind of dipping the toe back in the dating game again. I love writing kids. I love writing teenagers and kids and the interactions with the parents. It's always hilarious to me. So so then the whole series just evolved from there.
I love that you said that you love writing kids, because the kids in this book are they're amazing. Love them. There's
Thank
one
you.
scene in particular that I actually told Payne last night. I was like, oh my gosh, I was laughing, but then I felt bad at the same time laughing. But I love them. I'm like, those kids were, and I think like when authors add kids to books, it makes it more family vibe-ish. And I think that's what Getting Real, what I got from it. It's has to do a lot with family and him. Yes, he got a divorce and he's, like you said, he's dipping his toes back in the dating scene, but his mind, it's family.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what you delivered, and I loved it. It was funny. It was phenomenal. I know the audiobook releases
Yes.
first.
Yes.
So how is your process with audiobooks? I know that I believe it's Zachary and Andy the ones doing the narrating for Getting Real.
Yes. So Andy Arndt and Zachary Weber are narrating Getting Real. It comes out October 21st. So that's this coming week. So very exciting. And they have narrated the entire series. So they narrated Getting Schooled, Getting Played, and now they're returning for Getting Real. And what is phenomenal and about Andy and Zachary and their performance, it's truly phenomenal, is they're great with the comedic timing. They're great with the emotional, poignant moments of the story. They really perform the material. They're not just reading, which which makes it a different experience. It definitely kind of, like, I have a lot of readers who read the ebook and then listen to the audiobook just to kind of gain that different experience. And they are very, very easy to listen to. They really bring the characters to life in a lovely way. And they do the kids' voices really well. That's the thing too, really take apart what an audiobook narrator does. Like, there's one scene probably in Getting Real where there's Connor, there's Violet, there's Connor's 3 children, and 1 or 2 of his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's 3 adult male voices, 3 children's voices, and then a female voice. And you have to be consistent. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Throughout the whole book, you have to make them sound the same. Mm-hmm. So that's always just a miracle to me. How do they do that? But yeah, usually, so this series was an Audible original. Getting Schooled, Getting Played, and Getting Real are all Audible originals, meaning they are released on audiobook first. Mm-hmm. And they say the ebook and print will follow January 31st, 2022. So knowing that, definitely what it would sound like was forefront of my mind. And this was more, I think, with Getting Schooled, because that was the first Audible original that I had written. And Getting Schooled is still, one of my, I recommend, even for audiobook people who aren't audiobook listeners, I recommend Getting Schooled. Just because Andy and Zachary took that material and they took moments in the book that were entertaining and they made them hilarious. Like, just by their performances, their Jersey accents, like, it's very, very funny. So it's always kind of in the back of your mind. I would write notes for the manuscript, things that we would include in the audiobook. So, for example, sometimes when a character is thinking something and you're reading the book, you could just put those thoughts in italics and the reader understands that that's not being spoken aloud. But on an audiobook, that's not always clear. So sometimes we had to add, dialogue tags, or I thought this, just slightly change the manuscript. So when I sent that version to my editor, I would make notes for myself of items that we didn't necessarily have to include in the ebook and the print. So it's just a little bit, of a different things that you want to keep in mind when you're doing an audiobook first.
I love that. And I love the covers for this series.
Thank you.
Getting Real. Oh my gosh, that it's so mesmerizing. His eyes, everything perfect. Like, how did you come up with it? Because even for Getting Schooled and Getting Played, like, those covers are gorgeous. How did you come up with those covers?
So Wander Aguilar, he's the photographer, is the photographer. I came across them about a year. It was during lockdown. It was during the pandemic. for the Getting Real cover, I just happened to come across that image, and sometimes images grab you. That happened with Royally Screwed. Royally Screwed was a stock image, actually, and I had downloaded it, and I had considered it for a teaser. I think for maybe the Tangled series, I was thinking about using it as a teaser. But when we were looking for a cover for Royally Screwed, I kept coming back to that image and coming back to it and coming back to it. And I sent it to 𝐅𝐨𝐥𝐥𝐿, who is my cover designer, who's amazing. And she sent me that cover, and it pretty much like knocked me off my chair. It looked so good. So that happens a lot, especially with full faces. For me, they have to kind of embody the character, and they have to kind of say, you know, they just have to feel like the character to me. And that image for the cover of Getting Real, I licensed it about a year ago, and I was just holding on to it, and I'm like, it just fit. It just fit the story so perfect. And like you said, it's just memorizing, handsome, and the eyes, and it's just beautiful.
It was gorgeous. Well, and I like how you said that, because the special cover, the special edition cover that you took for Royally Yours of the couple,
Yes,
loved it. It's so cute, and I'm just like, that's them. That is so
them.
Danny and Nick, like, that's them.
I have so many images saved. And that's a stock photo also, but I have a whole file for them, because I'm like, oh, this will be perfect for teasers, because that's what I thought. It's them. And you know, that can be a wonderful thing, but a really stressful thing too, because you know, sometimes it takes a little while to find the right cover image. And thankfully, I feel like I've been pretty lucky. For the Royally series, you know, the same thing. Royally matched. The cover was Michael Stokes, and it was a photo that he had posted, I think, from his archives. It wasn't even something that was on his website, and I just happened to come across it. And I immediately thought, oh my God, it's like literally Henry, like in a chair, in a throne. So it's exciting, you know, when that happens. But it's always, you always have to have your eye out, you know, and sometimes images will strike you, or for me anyway, and I will, you know, either license them or download them or make a note of them, because it just might be something about it that really captures your attention for a story that you may not have yet, you know, but when it fits, it fits.
I love that, because your covers are so, I just love them. They're all so mesmerizing, but there's something about that special one that you did for Royally Yours and Getting Real. They're so eye-grabbing. Like, your eyes literally just go to them.
Yeah, it's just perfect. It is. Getting Real, I could just like stare at it. Like,
yes.
Yeah. And there's something about even the darker background that just like, you just see him, you know? Yeah.
And I think it has to do with the color too, because it brings out like his eyes. When you released the cover, like my eyes went directly to his. I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't stop staring.
And 𝐅𝐿𝐥𝐿, she's amazing. She's so fantastic, really. She's done all my self-published covers, and she's just phenomenal. Like you said, with the colors and the different styles, like things that I would never think of.
So you already tell us a little bit of what you're going to have upcoming. Can we know a little bit more about what you're going to have after Getting Real?
Getting Real comes out, the audiobook, October 21st. And I'm working on 2 projects right now. So I'm working on, like I said, something that I'm calling the Beach House book, which will be another Audible original. So it'll come out on audio first, and it'll be a standalone. And I'm hoping, don't quote me on this because that's up to Audible as well, but I'm hoping to see that come out in the summer of 2022. And that's definitely a rom-com, very push-pull, argue, clash, maybe like a little Tangled-ish feel to it. So I'm really having a good time writing that. And then I'm going to be finishing up, like I said, a companion novella to the Royally series. I'm titling it Royally Remembered. So I'm just going to tell you that.
I love that.
So, and that will be coming out at some point, probably the early part of 2022. So the first few months, I should say, of 2022. And then on January 31st, 2022, we have the ebook and print of Getting Real coming out. And then after that, I actually have an idea. It's going to be a pure standalone, and it's something that I've never really written before. So I don't know. It's still funny and rom-commy, but there's a little bit of supernatural, I guess, added in there. You could say a little supernatural element, magical element added in. So and that I'm going to be writing next year.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm so excited.
Oh, it's gonna be really fun. I have like a whole file written already. Like, different notes and ideas and scenes. And like I said, when we were talking about the scenes, like as they come to you, I always like immediately jot them down, because if I find it entertaining and funny and captivating, then I know you guys will too. So, and that's kind of how I fill in the blank of the character development in my stories, is with these scenes. So I think you're really gonna like that one.
I'm so excited. I love everything you write. There's something about your writing that I cannot put the book down. So I'm so excited, especially if we're trying something new. I'm like so down for it. I'm like, Emma Chase, I'll pick it up.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's important for authors to like stretch your wings and try different and new things. I know, no one wants to disappoint a reader. And that's why I think if you're going to try something different, as long as you're upfront, like if I was ever going to write, not a romance, like I would say, probably title it, "This is not a romance."
Yeah.
This is not a rom-com. I am a chase. Because I think readers' expectations are huge. You need to know kind of what you're getting. I do anyway. I want to know what I'm in for. But I think it's important for authors. Like I said, I've evolved, in my career, and I've had a lovely time doing it. And my readers have enjoyed the stories, that I've come up with. So I think that's important to try new things. Royally Yours, like, is a little bit more emotional than the stuff that I usually write. There was still humor in there and sexiness in there. But it was really special, to write those emotions. So I think it keeps everything fresh. Don't be afraid to kind of stretch your wings and try new things. And I just think it's a learning process and an evolving process, and it just keeps the writing exciting and engaging.
Would you ever write anything sort of kind of the same feel as the Royally series, with the whole royal family, or anything similar to that? 'Cause I know with Royally Yours, it was very heart touching. Will you write something similar to that?
I think so. Yeah, like I said, this project that I'm going to be working on next year is a little bit different, and it involves a little bit deeper emotions. I like that. I like kind of exploring that, maybe not frequently, because I did find it, emotionally draining. Like, I'm invested in my characters, and when they're hurting, I'm hurting.
And we're hurting.
Like, and I feel like I kind of need to get to that emotional place to make the scene hit. You know what I mean? To get it to a point where you guys are going to love it. But yeah, I definitely, think that we'll see some of that, like I said, in that project next year.
Before we let you go, we came up with this idea to see how well you know your books.
Oh no.
We picked, well, because I myself don't remember all the quotes. So we went on Goodreads yesterday and picked out some quotes from some of your books.
Oh, good. Okay.
And see if you know which book it is.
Okay.
So the first quote is, "My story hasn't been written yet, but I know it begins with you."
Royally Matched, Sarah.
Oh, yeah. You got it.
Oh, yeah.
"Sometimes a guy can't become a man until he's met the right woman."
Tangled, Drew.
Oh, wow. You're good.
I have to tell you a really funny story. This was years and years ago when Tangled first came out, and it was kind of like really big on Goodreads at the time. And my sister, she's a little bit younger than I am. She's in her 20s. She was over, and she hopped on Goodreads, and I was signed in under my account. And she took a quiz. Someone had made a quiz of Tangled. And it wasn't me. And she took the quiz, and she only got like 70% right, but it was under my name. Yeah. I said, "Oh my God, They're not even gonna know. They're gonna think I don't know my own book. A little aside. Continue.
I have feelings for him. I always have, but these aren't just leftover echoes of a sweet first love.
Getting schooled, Callie.
Yeah. It's scary, I know, giving someone that kind of power over you, accepting that your happiness will forever hinge on theirs, but it's worth it.
Oh. Dirty Charmer?
No.
Oh no! How did I know this already?
Appeal?
Oh, okay, yes, Appeal. Brant Kennedy. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Paper and ink. There's nothing like it. The only thing that smells better than a new book is an old one.
That's really matched. I love that quote.
It's actually royally screwed.
Oh my god! It's Sarah. Oh my gosh. I'm being tripped up. That's so true.
So the last one.
Yes.
When our bodies are dust in the ground and our souls are joined in whatever life comes after this one, the legend of our story and the echo of our love will live on forever.
Royally yours, Edward.
Yes.
Yeah, oh my gosh. That was harder than I thought.
Before out of 6, that is really good. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emma, for joining us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and we just love you, and we cannot wait for everything that's to come. And I want to personally thank you for not only taking the time to sit with us and talk to us, but also writing these phenomenal stories that we just love. So thank you so much, and we cannot wait for next year.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, this was so fun and so lovely. And knowing that you guys are excited, about these stories, it really is just so motivating, and it keeps me going, and it makes me excited to share these new stories and characters with you. So I'm thrilled. There's so many good things coming our way. I'm very excited for the year to come too.
Well, we can't wait, and hopefully we'll have you back with us when you write that new book that you're writing.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. 100%.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. We hope you have an amazing weekend.
Thank you. Both of you as well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Emma. It was an honor, pleasure, and I had so much fun. I was so nervous for this interview because I love Emma. Like, I love her book so much, and I feel that her writing, it's unforgettable. Like we mentioned before, Royally Yours has to be a book that you think of it and you still remember the most beautiful scenes ever. It's magical, like I said.
Yes.
And so it was such an honor to have her here, and I'm so excited for what's to come. I'm excited for the novella that she's writing for Royally, but it's gonna kill me, girl. Like,
I know.
I'm so here for it. I'm so here to anything that she writes. I pick up automatically. She is a no-brainer for me. Love her. So make sure you guys get the audiobook for Getting Real. It does release tomorrow, October the 21st. It is phenomenal. The story is so unique, and you're gonna be laughing and swooning, and it's just I loved it. Connor, gold, like hands down, gold. I'm talking about it, and I'm thinking about a scene that made me cry, but now I'm like find it really really funny. So make sure you pick it up. You guys are gonna love it. This series is a must read, so make sure you pick it up. The ebook and the paperback does come out early next year, so make sure you pick that up when it comes out. If you haven't read the first 2 books, each book can be read as a standalone, but Getting Schooled, guys, chef kisses. Love that book, and I really hope she does do that special scene with Callie and Garrett, because I love them, and y'all need to read this series ASAP. So please pick it up, and if you have any questions, just let us know. Make sure you're following Emma Chase on Instagram as well. Her handle is author Emma Chase. And we are going to link that in our Instagram plus our YouTube description. So make sure you're following her so you don't miss on any news of her upcoming books, her upcoming news on Tangled, the movie. So make sure you check that out. So I do want to announce we're doing a giveaway on our Instagram. We're giving away the first 3 hardback special edition female covers of Gianna Darling's The Fallen Men series. So make sure you check that out. Go to our Instagram. Our handle is at BookBuzz Podcast and enter that. And we're also going to be announcing our next author interview later this week. So make sure you're following us on Instagram. We see who that is. I'm so excited to have her on here. And again, if you have any questions for us, just let us know. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.